Do you feel any conflict with that? You've got fame, even though you participated in a murder?
Of course I feel conflicted.
Hey guys, in this video I'm going to do something a little bit different. We're not going to look at body language here. Instead, I'm going to dip into a little bit of psychology because I think it's important. I'm going to show you some of the triggers for you to look for two things. One is something commonly known as Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy, and another one is called arrested development. So let's get started.
Tell me about the day you stepped out from behind the prison walls.
You don't realize how much you're restricted in prison. I felt like I was in a black and white world and I just stepped into Technicolor. It was amazing.
The first part of this video, I want to focus on arrested development. First thing I want to let you know is arrested development is what's called traumagenic. Genic simply means genesis. It's the beginning of something. And so when something is traumagenic, that means it began with a trauma. Part of that can be detected by listening to this young lady's voice. See if you notice anything here.
Tell me about the day you stepped out from behind the prison walls.
You don't realize how much you're restricted in prison. I felt like I was in a black and white world and I just stepped into Technicolor. It was amazing.
Did you notice anything interesting about her voice? That it doesn't seem to fit her adult body. Listen specifically at how she says the last word, amazing.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It was amazing.
Did you notice that nearly all the words that she speaks sounds like something out of a Rugrats cartoon from the 1990s? She's got a very, very young sounding voice. And remember what I said earlier, arrested development is traumagenic, and it means that something that's developing stops. That's what it means to be arrested. If you get arrested, you stop doing something. If you have a cardiac arrest, your heart stops working. That's what an arrest means. So what happens is when someone experiences trauma when they're very young, the body continues to mature, but the brain does not. And it will manifest in several different ways. With each person, it's slightly different. For some people, it works out in their voice. If you've ever looked at a woman who's in her 20s or 30s or even older than that, and her voice sounds like a little tiny baby,
it was amazing.
It could just be her voice, but it also could be something traumatic happened to her at a very young age, and at that age, psychologically, the maturation process of her voice stopped. That being said, listen to this very short clip when she got out of prison. Listen to her voice. See if you can tell now that it sounds like a small child.
Hey everyone, this is Gypsy. I'm finally free.
Do you see what I mean? This is someone who experienced difficult trauma of some kind. It can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be sexual, which unfortunately happens a lot to people. When an adult woman sounds like a very small child, it does not mean in every situation that she had something traumatic happen when she was younger. Her voice could have simply developed that way. Just like in some men, their voices develop very deep. But in many cases, if you see an adult woman walking around and she sounds like a small child, something traumatic may have happened very young, causing arrested development in her voice. Now, the second thing I want to get to here is the situation with her mother, Dee Dee. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt that she did horrible things to this young girl, Gypsy Rose Blanchard. We know that she had impressed upon her the idea that she was sick. This is generally called Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. By proxy means you do it through another person. But more recently in the psychological field, we don't call it that anymore. We call it factitious disorder imposed on another. Some of the telltale signs when someone is doing this to another person is that they don't want you to be alone with the victim, usually a child. It can be an elderly person as well, but it's usually somebody in their direct care. So one of the big giveaways is they never want someone to be alone with the victim because they may say something. Another telltale sign is they do what's called doctor shopping. They will go to a doctor asking for prescriptions or looking for some kind of treatment. And this will go on for a while until the doctor begins to catch on, and then boom, they'll switch doctors or they'll move or they'll go to another city to get help. It's called doctor shopping. Here are a couple other signs to look for. If someone's doing this to a child, they'll sometimes use one or more of the following options as well. They can add blood to a child's urine or stool. They can heat up thermometers to fake a fever. They will regularly give kids drugs to make them sick. They sometimes will not feed them enough, so they look as though they're losing weight. They can fake lab test results and try to share those with other providers to get help. Or sometimes, if they've got any type of a background in medicine, they may administer an infected IV line. All the while, they will use what's called gaslighting. And gaslighting, you may be aware, is when you constantly tell somebody something until they begin to believe it. The problem is it's not true. So ultimately, the victim begins to believe the thing that they know is not true. And when they begin to believe something they know is not true, it causes cognitive dissonance. We'll go into that another time. But one way to resolve that is to simply accept that the person who continues to tell these things must be telling the truth, and that you yourself must be out of your mind. There must be something wrong with you. And when you finally accept that, that's when the person succeeds at gaslighting you. Now, people do this all the time to young children and even to elderly people. They will tell them over and over that they're sick, that there's problems, and that they need treatment. And this can go on for months or even years until a doctor catches on, and again, boom, that's when they'll begin doctor shopping again. So these are just two things that I want you to notice from this very public case of Gypsy Rose Blanchard and the situation that she was in. The first thing being arrested development. Watch for things that don't look like they match the body. If the body matures and the mind doesn't, and something stops and something breaks, pay attention to that. It could be traumagenic. It could be something that started with a trauma when they were very young. In addition, if you see the signs of Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy, or as it's generally called in psychology now, factitious disorder imposed on another, watch for those signs. I know this is a little bit different than our normal body language and facial expressions and all that sort of thing, but this is something that many of my subscribers have asked for some time. So I felt the need to give it to you. I'm hoping that this helps you in some way, and I'm hoping that you begin to watch for these signs. All right, guys, do me a favor. If you're still here, click on one of these other videos over here. There are several more coming in the next few days, and I'm excited to get to some of these because they're very interesting. All right, guys, thanks a lot. I'll catch you on the next video.